I was standing in the boarding queue when the man behind me asked, "Where are you sitting?" I was flying alone, halfway through downloading music before takeoff, when I turned and locked eyes with him. He had a little boy with him, maybe 4 years old, and the man had these tired, kind eyes that didn't feel threatening at all. 13A, I said. You? He just smiled, didn't answer. I shrugged it off and forgot about him, until we were airborne and he and his son slid into the 2 empty seats beside me. I was immediately unsettled because I was almost certain I'd seen them sitting near the back. Sorry, he said quickly. There was a lot of noise back there. Bit much for us. Except there was no noise. The cabin was dead quiet. Before I could respond, he reached down very deliberately and pulled off one sock, then the other, all while maintaining direct eye contact. Then he smirked, like he'd just done something outrageous. I glanced at the boy, expecting embarrassment. Instead, the kid was grinning so hard his whole face had folded up, giggling like his dad had just told the funniest joke in human history. Any sensible person would have complained immediately. I was going to. But I was in the window seat. They were between me and the aisle, and honestly, some small part of me wanted to see what came next. What came next was this. In complete silence, he reached into his bag, produced a single green grape, held it toward me and whispered, "You look hungry." I shook my head and pressed myself into the wall of the plane. He popped it into his own mouth, chewed slowly, and kept staring at me. The boy burst into applause like he'd watched a magic trick. Enough. I hit the call button. A flight attendant came over. "Any chance I could move seats?" I asked, widening my eyes at her, hoping she'd read the situation. She glanced at the man, and then, I swear, she gave him a small, knowing smile. "Sorry, we're completely full. You'll have to stay put." What? So I tried a different approach. I stood up and announced I was going to the toilet. A second attendant intercepted me in the aisle. The captains asked passengers to remain seated for now. The seatbelt sign was off. 3 other people were wandering around. Then she leaned in and murmured, "Just give him a few more minutes. Trust me." Trust her? About what? I went back to my seat with my heart hammering, absolutely certain that every single person on this plane was in on something except me. The man leaned in, looked me dead in the eye, and said with enormous sincerity, "Do you believe in fate? Because I think this flight was meant to happen." It was rehearsed, word for word, like a script. The boy gave a huge thumbs up, unclipped his belt, and trotted off toward the toilets. And the second he was gone, the man's whole face collapsed. The performance drained out of him, and what was left was just a very tired man with very sad eyes. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "Please, let me explain." I said nothing. He took a breath. "My wife died 6 months ago. Before that, we used to do this thing on long flights. She'd pick someone and wind them up, completely straight-faced. Socks, the grape, the fate line. All of it was hers. Our son thought it was the funniest thing in the world." He glanced toward the toilets. "He hasn't laughed properly since. Not once. So every few weeks I book us a flight and I do her whole routine exactly the way she did it, because it's the only thing that gets him back for an hour." His voice cracked. "The crew know. I always tell them beforehand and ask them to just let it play out." He looked down at his bare feet. "I should have asked you first. I saw you in the queue and you looked like someone who'd be kind about it. That's not an excuse. I'm sorry." I looked at this man, sitting there shoeless and wrecked and apologizing, and I started to laugh, and then, humiliatingly, to cry a bit. The boy came back and climbed into his seat and said, "Did you do the grape?" "I did the grape," his father said. "Did she scream?" I turned to that little boy and said with total conviction, "I nearly called the pilot." He laughed so hard he got the hiccups. That was 10 years ago. Last week, in a small church, I married a man who once took his socks off at me on a plane. His son walked me down the aisle. He's 14 now, and when the priest asked if anyone objected, he stood up, pulled a single green grape from his pocket, and held it out. Nobody in that church understood except the 3 of us. We laughed until we couldn't breathe.